dropping shit at the pilot. Niggas be broken, be sobbing, but still talking shit like they violent. Niggas is broke.
So what a day it is for the NBA. We got Phil Jackson being fired, thank God. Shout out to the Knicks, but let's be real. James Dolan is the real reason for all that mess, but that's for another video. But the main news today was Chris Paul. Specifically, Chris Paul being traded to the Houston Rockets. Now let's go over the trade first. The Clippers traded Chris Paul after he opted in on the last year of his contract for Patrick Beverley, Lou Williams, Sam Dekker, Montrezl Harrell, and a bunch of filler and the 2018 first round draft pick of the Houston Rockets. Now let's talk about the winners and the losers of this trade. And to be honest, I'm gonna have to give the dub to the Clips, because as we just found out, Chris Paul was gonna leave anyways. And as we saw with Kevin Durant, LeBron James, and other free agents of the past, they let them walk out and got nothing in return. Meanwhile, the Clippers got Patrick Beverley, a solid starting point guard in the league and an all-NBA defender, Lou Williams, who was the runner-up for his 6th man of the year, I'm pretty sure, a first-round draft pick, which is always nice, and other role players like Montrezl and Dekker to improve their weak-ass bench. So to me, the Clippers easily won this deal just for the fact that they got something for Chris Paul, let alone this. Now with that being said, I'm not saying the Rockets lost the deal because they did get Chris Paul. I'm just saying the Clippers won it more. And another underrated part about this is Blake Griffin, because there is a better chance now that he'll stay, knowing he'll get more money, live in LA, and be the man for the Clippers. So shout out to the Clippers, man, because they could have ended up with Chris Paul being gone without anything in return and Blake Griffin leaving because of it. But instead, they got something for Chris Paul, and that something that they got could be used to lure Blake Griffin back. Now on to the Rockets and Chris Paul. Man, you know what? Looking at the trade, let me take it back. The Rockets lost on this deal, or at least they lose on this deal until I see them on the court together. Key phrase, until I see them on the court together, because who knows? D'Antoni may make it work, or Chris Paul and James Harden could find a way to make this work, but let's just look at it from a team perspective. The Rockets gave away an all-NBA first defender in Patrick Beverley, and the runner-up for the 6th man of the year, who probably would have been the 6th man of the year if he was on the bench of another team, for a 32-year-old Chris Paul on a 1-year contract, where now you don't even have any cap space to sign a max contract free agent. And if it all fails, Chris Paul could leave in free agency again, the same way Howard left LA after 1 year. And let's not forget the fact that Chris Paul has been injured in the playoffs for 2 years in a row. So from a financial standpoint, it's an L. And from a medical standpoint, it's an L as well. Now let's look at the play style. Mike D'Antoni's system works best with one ball-dominant guard and a bunch of shooters to surround that one guard. Look at Steve Nash and the Suns before and the Rockets last season. That's how he succeeds. But we've never seen his offense with two ball-dominant point guards. And you have two of the most ball-dominant point guards of all time on the same team. And not only that, you gave away a sharpshooter in Lou Williams, so that takes away from the system. And I feel like the idea that some people have is that these two guys will combine forces and average the same numbers when they're definitely not. This is not Stockton and Malone. This is not Shaq and Kobe. This is not Scottie and MJ, where their games complemented each other. This would be like Jason Kidd and Steve Nash playing on the same team. They're not gonna play the same way, and if they did, they would definitely not average the same stats. So when people say, oh, they're going to combine for 20 assists because James Harden averaged 11 last year and Chris Paul averaged 9. That's just dumb. I'm sorry, man. And some even think that they'd both average 10 simply because of D'Antoni's system, which again is completely wrong, because Harden got 11 assists, barely 10, with an extremely high usage rate. And Chris Paul barely got 9 last year on his own. So if you combine both of them, why would they average more assists? Why would they average 10? They probably average around 5 to 7 assists individually, and their scoring might even take a hit because most of their points, probably 60-70% plus, do come from on ball. So there's a good chance this might not even work out as good as people think it will. And let's just say everything does work out. Everything goes right. Let's just say somehow their play styles match and everything is better than what I think. Is it good enough to beat Golden State though? Their bench was the only advantage they had on Golden State last year. Now it's basically just Eric Gordon. If they're trying to outshoot Golden State, replacing Lou Williams with Chris Paul sure isn't helping. They got Klay Thompson and Kevin Durant to put on James and Chris Paul. And if that doesn't work out, they got Iggy. And even if they put Curry, Draymond's an excellent help defender and Curry's been owning Chris Paul for years now. So if the point of this trade is to outstar Golden State, it didn't work. If the point of this trade is to out-offense Golden State, then it probably won't work. And if it does, it's still probably not going to be better than Golden State. And as a matter of fact, is it even good enough to beat San Antonio, who beat the Rockets without Kawhi last year and are making room to sign a guy like Kyle Lowry or Derrick Rose that if anything will at least make Chris Paul work on defense, expending his energy for offense? So again, I just don't see how this benefits the Rockets except for the fact that they have another star, because it's not like they're trying to keep James Harden happy because he's under contract for a couple more years. He doesn't really have any leverage, and it's not like Chris Paul was the player they needed to complete and perfect their system. So if I'm not mistaken, the plan is to go all in this year against a more experienced Golden State with a 32-year-old Chris Paul on a 1-year deal with probably a new system, and if they tried to use a system that they used before, it's probably not going to be as good because of the lack of the bench and the fact that Chris Paul is not a sharp shooter. And even if everything works out, it still probably won't be enough to beat Golden State, and I'm not even sure it's enough to beat San Antonio. And for Chris Paul, man, even just Chris Paul as an individual, me and Lo were talking about this in the Discord today. Shout out to the Discord real quick. If you guys want to talk to the HTP guys, you know, fellow subscribers and Lo's hating ass, click the link in the description. But going back to the topic, we were talking about why Chris Paul even wanted to go to Houston. He's not going to be the man there. He's not going to push them over the top. And if the whole point of going to Houston over San Antonio was to play off ball more, it's not like San Antonio will force you to play on ball all the time. If anything, they want that more from Chris Paul in Houston than in San Antonio. But here's a quick conspiracy theory, man, before we go out. Melo's probably going to be bought out. LeBron's on a 1-year contract. Dwayne Wade is on a 1-year contract. And so is Chris Paul. And Los Angeles just cleared a lot of cap space by getting rid of Timofey Mozgov and signing Brook Lopez's expiring contract. Banana boat? But with that being said, man, I'm out. Peace.